Hey the Koopos, what's going on? Guyuski here, and we are beginning a new and amazing YouTube series. I don't have a title for it yet. I don't know what to call it, but basically here's what we're doing. We are taking interesting bits of history, hands right here, taking interesting bits of history and we're combining it with video game footage. Today we're going to be talking about a badass woman of Russian history with Super Metroid that has a badass woman from video game history. But I don't know, man. Someday we could be talking about the Byzantine Empire and Super Mario World. Who knows? But yeah, I feel like today goes together very well, and I hope you come to see that too. And of course, right as I do this, no, lion buddy, you're gonna mess up the camera. Oh. I love how I finally get to the point to do this, and then my cats show up and they're like, "Hey, are you recording something? Can we get in on that?" I don't know. Cats are weird. Just eat. You don't need to look at me. You don't need permission. All right. Anyways, you know who didn't need permission? That's my segue. Olga, or Saint Olga, or Olga of the Kiev and Ruse, which is who we're going to talk about today. So let's dive in. And that's my transition because, you need flashy transitions. Before we can talk about Saint Olga, I briefly need to talk about two things. I need to talk about our source for our knowledge on Saint Olga, and I also need to talk about the history of the country of Ruse, which we'll get to more of that in a moment. Anyways, number one, the source. There's basically only one fucking source on this, and it's the Primary Chronicle, and literally I saw spit just flying. That's how passionate I am about this. But that's it. That's literally the only source I was able to find, and it's really fucking weird, because a lot of people agree that the Primary Chronicle, written in the 1100s, is not accurate. It's written in the 1100s, and it covers the first 300 years of the Kievan Rus people, or country, or territory, or empire. I don't know. Please, if you're from Eastern Europe or Western Asia, tell me what to call this group. I'm going to call it a country because that's what works in my head. But if it's supposed to be called something else, tell me about it. Anyways, let me get more frustrated. People complain that the Primary Chronicle is inaccurate, that it's too literary, and there's a number of other little literary reasons why people are upset with it. But what bothers me is that nobody provides me a fucking alternative. Everybody says, "Oh yeah, this isn't legit." What is legit? Please tell me what is a legit source, because the shit I'm about to talk about is awesome and I want it to be true. So there you go. We basically have one source, and that's the part one. It's the Primary Chronicle. And two, a really brief history. Now, when I say brief, I mean super brief, because I think there's a larger, more interesting topic about the history of the Rus country. Anyways, here we go. The country of Rus was founded by Rurik. Rurik was a Varangian, not a Ferengian, which the Varangians were basically Vikings. And again, this is probably a Western simplification, but that's what I'm calling them. Now, if you want to imagine Quark, a Ferengi, as a Viking, and if you want to make a picture of that, please send it to me. I want it more than anything in my life. I really do. Rurik, who we're going to call a Ferengi, that's probably offensive. I don't mean to offend you. It's just it sounds similar, and that's what pops into my head. So Rurik was asked by the Slavic people, the Eastern Slavs and the West Asian Slavs, they said, "Hey, rule us," which is weird. And it is one of those examples where I look at the Primary Chronicle and I go, maybe it's not right. Because anyways, Rurik does, and it's great. He does a lot of war, a lot of consolidation, and basically turns these, not nomadic, but these tribal Slavic peoples into one group, the Rus. Now, they're known as the Kievan Rus because of the city of Kiev, but Rurik actually established his principality, his country, out of Novgorod. But Oleg, his brother-in-law, decided to move it to Kiev. And why did he move it to Kiev? Because Kiev was great. It was full of wealth and beauty and all the reasons why you move a capital. So Oleg takes over, does a lot of war, does a lot of cool shit. He's actually known as Oleg the Wise and probably deserves his own video. He took over because Rurik's son, Igor, was not old enough to rule. So Oleg does his thing, he dies, Igor takes over. Igor does a lot more war, does a lot of other cool shit, doesn't get a cool moniker like the Wise or Saint. But it is important to understand how Igor dies. Now, basically, there was a group of people west of Kiev known as the Drevlians. I also apologize for my pronunciation because I'm terrible at it. And I want to also point out that I tried to get it right, but I'm not sure. So the Drevlians killed Igor. Not only did they kill Igor, but supposedly they tortured him. And that left the Ruse Empire, the country of Ruse, in the hands of Igor's wife, Olga. And it was Olga who became regent, not the Grand Prince. I think that's what they're called, the Grand Prince? Yeah. It was not Igor's son, Svatoslav, because Svatoslav was too young. So Olga takes over as regent until Igor is old enough to do his own, or till Svatoslav is old enough to do his own thing. Here's the weird part, and it's one of those things that's probably so weird it has to be true. The Drevlians, after killing Igor, send emissaries to Olga saying, hey, our bad, he was kind of, he was attacking us. And again, there's a whole reason why Igor was killed, and it has to do with him wanting more stuff. And the Drevlians finally got fed up, but that's a whole nother thing. So the Drevlians say, our bad, he was a dick, so that's why we killed him and tortured him. But our leader wants to marry you. Now, Olga is fucking smart, as you're going to learn. Olga says, cool, this sounds like a great idea. How about tomorrow you come back during the day so that we can honor you? Not only will we honor you by accepting us into our city, but our people are going to carry you on your boats into our city. The next day happens. The people come out, carry them into the city, and they carry them into a trench, where then Olga has her people bury them alive. It's the coolest fucking thing. It's super fucked up, but it's super fucking cool. So anyways, this happens, and all of them die. All the emissaries die. But Olga was like, you know what? I really need to get rid of them. So she sends word to the Drevlians saying, hey, we would like the rest of your emissaries to show up so that we can properly understand the offer that you're making. So the Drevlians, not hearing about the fact that their previous emissaries were buried alive, sends the rest of their emissaries to Kiev. And what does Olga do? Well, she says, you know what, this is such a joyous occasion. I want to celebrate. How about you guys hang out in our bathhouse, our sauna? And they do. And what does Olga do? Light it on fire. Burn them alive. Holy shit. Now, at this point, you think the Drevlians would be like, this is a little weird. But again, the emissaries are all being killed, so nobody's telling them what the fuck is going on. So Olga then sends word saying, you know what? This is awesome. I would love to marry your leader, whose name was Mal, I think. I think it was Mal or Ma. Anyways, she says, I'm coming. Let's go ahead and get all liquored up and ready to go. So anyways, the Drevlians set up this big party. They get really drunk. And what happens? Olga and her military attack and fuck them up while they're all drunk and too tired to fucking function. But that's not it for the Drevlians. So anyways, they get set back. They have their problems, but they start fighting. And the battle, I'm not going to call it a war, because to be honest, like, these people didn't go to war like we consider it today. The Slavic people and a lot of people during these time frames have these little battles, right? And a lot of these battles, I want to say, don't end with territory gained. In this instance, it does, but in a lot of battles, they end with trade agreements. And that's what this was all about. this was, and not this war, but that's what it was all about for the Slavic people, at least to my understanding, is getting these really good trade agreements. And in fact, they would go to war with somebody or go to battle with somebody, kill tons of people, get a trade agreement, and then become really good buddies. It was really fucking weird, and I don't fully understand it. But we'll see more here in a little bit when we talk about the Byzantine Empire. So anyways, the Drevlians fight back. Olga realizes that they can't take their city. Okay? So she devises a plan. She says, hey, you know what? We're good. We're not going to attack anymore. We just want you and your people to give us 3 birds per household. Which, when I learned about this, I was like, that's weird. Why the fuck do you care about birds? But once again, you have to understand that during this time, these types of trade agreements were really normal. It was about establishing trade with these people. And so the Drevlians were like, that's cool. They give them the birds. Well, Olga has her people attach sulfur and cloth to the feet of the birds. So that then when the birds get released and head back to their nests, as birds do, they decide, they combine together and it starts a giant fire. And the fire there's a blazing fire throughout the entire town. Olga and the Ruse people take over, and that's it for the Drevlians. And to my understanding, they fall kind of into antiquity. That's a weird word to say. Without much influence, much more importance later on. So that's it for the Drevlians. Olga does some badass shit. But I want to talk about 2 more badass things about Olga. And really, there's so much, and this video really isn't like a comprehensive Olga video because there's so much you could talk about, and I just don't want to make a 30-minute video about her. So talk about 2 more things. One, why is she called Saint Olga? Well, she's called Saint Olga because she was the first Rus leader to convert to Christianity. Gotta understand, the Slavic people were polytheistic. They believed, and very common, people, they believed in the god of the earth, the god of the sky, all those different gods. And again, that's its own story that you can go into. So, Olga, this is a really fucking interesting story. Olga gets baptized in Christianity. And it's not entirely understood why she decides to, but she decides to become Christian. So, before she does, though, and this is where we get to the Byzantine Empire, the leader of the Byzantine Empire, which at the time was Constantine the 7th, is like, hey, I want to marry you. It would be hella dope if you were my empress, right? And Olga says, that's cool, but I need to be baptized. And I need you to be there to witness my baptism. And he's like, okay, that's cool. So she gets baptized by the head priest of and this is not your Western Christianity. This is Eastern Orthodox. That's very important to understand with Russian history, is that it's Eastern Orthodox Christianity. And so she gets baptized, and the Constantine the 7th is there to observe it. And afterwards, he's like, cool, you're Christian, let's get married. And she's like, you, however, sir, are my godfather, and it is forbidden for me to marry my godfather. To which Constantine was like, nice. In fact, I'm not sure, I can't remember exactly how the Primary Chronicle writes it, but it's one of those things where Constantine was like, yeah, she outsmarted me there. It's pretty good. So that's 1-1. Now, she was not the leader of the Kiev and Rus to spread Christianity throughout the country of Rus. That would actually be her grandson, Vladimir the First. So that doesn't happen till later. In fact, her son, Svatoslav, was opposed to Christianity. And in his mind, he was like, well, Christians aren't warlike people. And so he thought that the Christianity would make his people weak and meek and humble, which he was not a fan of. So that's basically a super bite-sized version of, Olga the Wise, or Saint Olga. And yeah, she does a lot. She spreads the empire. She has a number of wars. It's hotly debated what role she played in the battles. You know, some of the battles portray her as this like knight that went in and fought with the men, but there's other and probably a more realistic idea that she was more of like a general over the people, that she was kind of like the decision maker, but she was a high level decision maker, that she wasn't actually out in the field fighting. Yeah, and on top of that, she just did a lot of good for her people. She did not, as I said, spread Christianity throughout the land, but she did a lot for the Ruse people, and that's why, you know, later on she became a saint. I can't remember when she was sainted, but she is a saint. In fact, not only in Russia, but in Eastern Europe, and in a number of places, she is considered a saint today. So yeah, that's it. That's Olga. I feel like I'm not doing her justice, but at the same time, you know, there's not a whole lot known about her. With one source, there's not a ton of information. So she dies peacefully. She gets sick, and she passes away after getting sick, at which point Svatoslav had already taken over. So if you want to learn more, there's tons of really cool resources on her. You know, it's one of those times where I would actually say Wikipedia is probably a good idea for it, just because there's not a ton of information and it consolidates it really well. If you want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, you can get the Primary Chronicle for free from a lot of different places. It's an interesting read, and I suggest checking it out. I didn't really talk about how it connects with Super Metroid, because, you know, there's not a whole lot of connection except for badass women. So there you go. I want to thank you for watching. If you have any suggestions, please let me know. I would love to hear what you have to say. If you have any recommendations for cool historical facts or fiction, not fiction, facts, cool historical bits of knowledge, please share that with me as well. I would love to research them and do videos about them. So thank you all so much for watching. Talk to you soon.